Thank you everybody for joining us for the third installment of our developer workshop series. This workshop is going to be focused on account setup for the video SDK. So we'll be talking all about that and answering any questions that you all may have. My name is Rehema Armorer. I'm a developer advocate engineer, and I'll be hosting alongside my coworker, Kelly Andrews, who will introduce himself in just a minute. So before we go ahead and hop into our agenda, we're going to start with another icebreaker. We kind of already started with a little one, but we'll do one more. So given the time of the year that we're in, I want to ask everyone, what would be your ideal app for gift shopping? So think, if you could create your own app, no limits, what would be the ideal app? And I think mine, I'm going to start off. I think mine would be if I could just insert the contact from my phone and it could just tell me what gift to get for them. It could order the gift for me. So I think I insert the contact, it asks me to confirm on the page, I confirm and the gift is ordered, it arrives on time. I think that would be my ideal app. So I would love to hear, Kelly, you can start it off. Anyone else, what would be your ideal application?
Oh man, one that knew what my kids wanted because I don't have a clue day to day. They'll change it on me, and I have too many of them to keep track. So it's one that just said, did it all. And no, I like knowing what they're up to and getting their wish list. But sometimes they'll say things I don't necessarily know what it is. It's like not necessarily. So I have to do a lot of research, and so maybe something that could take a snapshot. Here we go. Take a snapshot. I'm just thinking on the fly. Snapshot of their Christmas list and come up with a shopping list for me, and then just hit send, and it's like delivered.
Okay, nice. I like that one. Thinking of the children. I love it. Michael said an app where it scrapes all my web traffic activity and sends sends me a surprise gift based on what it thinks I'll like. I love that. I love that. We don't need privacy. Just scrape all my traffic activity. Gianni said, and then Gianni, if you could just everyone make sure you're typing to everyone versus just hosts and panelists. But Gianni, I'll read yours aloud. An app where the vendors compete to offer me the best price to purchase from them. I like that. I like that.
I feel like somebody's done that before, and it was too early. Like the market wasn't ready for it, but now it would be.
It was before its time.
Yeah.
These are some good applications. If anyone wants to, get started on one, let us know. Like reverse bidding for gifts. Yeah. Yeah.
Basically.
I like that. All right. Well, thanks for breaking the ice with us, everybody. We are going, and feel free to continue to drop in the chat if you think of an app that you just have to share. But we're going to go ahead and keep it moving. So we'll review our agenda for today. We're going to start off with setting up your video SDK account. Then from there, we're going to also review some common FAQs and just some troubleshooting items that are good to know when setting up and working with your video SDK account. We're then going to go over video SDK credentials, when and how to use those, and specifically how to use them within your application. And lastly, we're going to review some essential key resources for working with the video SDK on the web platform. So before we go ahead and jump into creating your video SDK account, I'm just going to pass the mic to Kelly and allow him to introduce himself, and then we'll continue to move on.
All right. So I'm, as she said, my name's Kelly Andrews. I'm a developer advocate here and father of 6. All kinds of crazy stuff I could tell you, but we won't go into many details. I like writing codes, so you'll be able to see some code examples later, and I'll run through those for you. So.
All right. Thanks, Kelly. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we are going to start this off by creating our video SDK account. So now is the time to go ahead and get ready to do this if you do not have a video SDK account. I'm going to start off within our documentation. Go ahead and just give me a thumbs up if you are seeing the documentation page. Share it on my screen. Yes. Yep. I see a hand up. Oh, nope. I think that was supposed to be a thumbs up, but I'm going to assume that's confirmation so we can see that. So now I'm just going to go ahead and show us how to get to that link we can use to purchase the video SDK, video SDK plan. So from the documentation, I'm going to jump to get credentials on the left side. And then from there, I'm going to click on step 2 right here, go to the video SDK purchase page. Now we're also going to look at step 1, which is telling us to log out from your Zoom account if you are logged in. The reason for this is that to work with the video SDK, you do need a completely separate account from your normal Zoom account that you use. So again, you'll need to log out. And if you haven't already done so, we're going to create that new and separate account that's distinctly for working with the video SDK. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. And from here, I'm going to be brought to the plans and pricings for developers for buying the video SDK. Now I'm going to, for today, go with video SDK pay as you go. This plan is 0.0035 cents per minute after your first free 10,000 minutes that are included every month. Again, those are free 10,000 minutes every month. And from here, we're going to go ahead and click buy now. Now, if you're following along with me on the live session, I'm going to give everyone a few seconds to get to this page. Make sure you're here. If you will be purchasing at this time, make sure you do have your payment information on hand. Give us a few seconds and then we'll move on. And if you are following along, oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Right. No, let me give me 1 second. I'll do the, I did not get that link copied yet. So I'm going to drop that into the link here for you. 1 second.
Kelly. And once you get that link, if you are following along, just feel free to give a thumbs up so we know you are at the same place, and then we're going to go ahead and move on.
So that will be the place to click on the video SDK purchase page link that she was just showing you.
Yep, and then again, from there, you're clicking on step 2, video SDK purchase. It's going to pull you right here. And now from here, we're going to go for today's demo with video SDK pay as you go, buy now. So now I can go ahead, it's already pre-selected my pay-as-you-go plan. And now I can add on some features to enhance my Zoom experience. So for today's demo, I'm going to go ahead and select video SDK recording. Now this is what allows you to enable the recording feature on your applications that you build using the video SDK. Without this added on, you are going to run into an error if you try to implement recording methods within your application. So you can add it on here. If you choose not to, you can add it on later on within your account settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click add. It's showing me that 1 terabyte is $100 per month. That is the minimum purchase amount. I'm going to skip audio conferencing, but we'll go over what this does. From starting at $100 a month, you can enhance video sessions by allowing people to call in. So similar to what you see on the client, where you have the option to dial in, you can add on that feature to your video SDK application, but we're going to skip that for now. Again, this is something that you can go back and add later on within your account settings. So I see my summary on the side, pay as you go. I have a monthly subscription for video SDK recording. Total is 100. Next bill will be charged a month from now. If you're following along, you can let me know you're good to go, giving me a thumbs up. And then otherwise, if we don't have any questions, we're gonna continue and move forward. All right, looks like. Okay, and I see your question, Aaron, about do we have a small recording charge? We can address that. Someone will address that for you within the chat as well. Do you have a small recording size for people? Yeah. Right now it is set at $100 per month. Again, you do have those for recording. I'm going to let Kelly, can you answer that in the chat? Or aloud?
Let's see. Currently we only have the 1 tier, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's no, like, he didn't do it as an open question, but in the chat is for Aaron, directed to you specifically. So,
and this is actually for the, for the pay-as-you-go plan. Mm-hmm. For what we call our universal credit plan, we have the video SDK pricing. Sorry, pardon me. The recording pricing would be like included in that monthly commitment, in which it is charged at a lower rate as well. The recording is an add-on plan to pay-as-you-go plans, which which Rehema has selected here.
Thank you, Michael and Kelly, for both addressing that. So we'll go ahead and continue. And then from here, we're going to go ahead, and this is your sign up page. So you'll select your age. This is for verification and demographic purposes. You'll type in your name. I'm going to do a test name for now. And then at this point, because this does have to be a separate email address than what you use for Zoom, you can use the plus sign addition and just plus sign amendum and just add to your email address to make it a different email address, but one that still attaches to the original account that you may use. So for example, if my email was rehema.test@gmail.com, I could do rehema.test plus video SDK@gmail.com. So I went ahead and just added my sub-address by using the plus sign and just wrote video SDK to make it specific. And this will allow me to receive any emails to this address in my default Gmail account. So then from here, I'm going to go ahead and just write in a password, and then I will continue to address. So at this point, I'm going to stop in my demo. I'm not going to put in this information, but we did see that we can select our plan, we can select add-ons, and we'll also go ahead and enter in our sign-up information, seeing how we can use the plus sign addition to our email address, and therefore have a different address, but link these any emails that come to this address to our original account. From here, if you're following along, you can go ahead and add in your address information. If it's a business account, you'll add in that information as well. And then we're going to continue to payment. So I'm going to pause right here. If we have any more questions, Aaron, that was a great question. If we have any more questions, feel free to ask in the chat about account setup or about any additions onto the video SDK account that you may have. Any questions about payments? We're going to pause here for questions, give it a few minutes or so, and then we'll continue to move on.
Yeah, I think it's really good to just maybe call out Aaron's question in particular. So coming from a previous provider who charged per gigabyte, do we have smaller recording charge for people still prototyping and incubating? Let me take the feedback back and figure out how we get prototyping plans available. Aaron, if you would like, and we can chat about this maybe directly, we're totally available to help you get a free trial going of that recording, particularly as you're incubating. And then the second is, and just to call out, we'll probably connect you to some folks on our sales team who can help you get that settled, but we'll follow up and make sure you can do that. And then the difference is in that previous provider, Twilio, they charged per minute per user for recordings, and Zoom Video SDK recording is done per session minute rather than maybe per user minute. And there's a few, obviously there's a little like details on there, some asterisks. Session minutes are, let's say, so the example I used in the chat, it's, if I had 10 users, 10 minutes, it would be 10 recording minutes. And then just the notable caveat, I guess, would be if you wanted to do recording for both active speaker and gallery view, those would be 2 recording files. So if you had a session for 10 minutes with 10 users and you chose to do gallery view recordings and active speaker recordings, it would be 20 recording minutes, if that makes sense, because you've like created 2 recording files. Yeah, so Aaron says, I hear you on the session per user. We do small sessions, 2 to 3 endpoints. I appreciate the savings for a larger session with many endpoints. Cool. Thanks for that carve out, Rehema.
Yeah, no problem. And we do actually have another question. This is directed towards you, Michael, but anyone who has an answer can answer. I'm just going to read it aloud.
Yeah, maybe that one was an internal one about just like the flow for free trials. I think if So the question is maybe how we can, if you're watching this recording and you're like, how do I get a free trial? If you just do our contact, there should be a contact sales flow, and that team is the team that will help you make sure you get a free trial to get started.
Thank you again, Michael. And again, so for anyone who is following along as we are setting up our account, if you are following along, feel free to give us a thumbs up, or if you have any more questions, again, feel free to ask in the chat. And I'm just reading a question now that we have in the chat from Aaron.
So you'll get there's a couple of ways you can get it, but depending on, like, we'll get multiple ones for our session because we have spotlights, and they'll have the local recording I'll get will have like the screen sharing, what will be one, this and then the spotlighted users will also be one. So but they come as one. I don't think the audio is not separate, correct?
No.
Can anybody? Yeah. It's all, like, I'm just making sure I didn't forget or think of something different. But yeah, no, it's all one big file, and then you get a text file as well with all of the transcription. So.
Thank you, Kelly.
If it is similar to meetings, you'll get an MP4, and that's audio video. You can also, I believe, if it's similar to meetings, they're like the other way that we handle cloud recording, you can get an MP3, which is audio only. And then, as you said, there's that text file with any.
Aaron, and just for the recording, Aaron asked, how the playback and the recordings, how they came back, and it was previous vendor had two separate files, and in this case we're just confirming that it's just one file, so you don't have to like put them together in a editing process or anything like that first. So.
All right, thanks everybody for Kelly. Thank you for going back and reading that question aloud for the recording. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on from creating our account and just go over some good to knows for when you're working with the video SDK. Let me go ahead and resume sharing my screen. All right, so these are just some things to keep in mind when working with your video SDK account. Like we mentioned before, if you're not sure what email address to use when making the separate account, you can use the email you already use for your Zoom account that you have and use a + sub address. So it could be like your email address. You could do +vid SDK, video SDK, video, whatever you want to use to specify the email that it is. And then you can just add the same domain that you're using before. So it might be like I put rehema.test + video SDK@gmail.com. Now, if you're unable to access the Build Video SDK section on the Marketplace website, which you'll see in just a second, if you can't access that, you do want to make sure that you're logged into your Video SDK account. So if it's not showing up, you're not seeing Build Video SDK, you'll want to log out and then log back in with that specific Video SDK account. And then the same for vice versa. When you're working with your Zoom client, you do want to make sure that you're logged out of that Video SDK account and just logged into your normal client. No problems there, but just want to keep things separate as much as we can. Now, additionally, if you want to do recording like we just talked about, but you run into an error when trying to implement the recording method, you do want to make sure you have a recording plan purchased on your Video SDK account. Now, if you don't want to add that in when you originally purchased your Video SDK plan, that's fine. Again, you go into account settings and you'll add it in there. And lastly, if you're having any issues with entering your card information while making this purchase, if you've checked and there's no issue on behalf of your card holder, then you can go ahead and reach out to us either on the dev forum and we can create a ticket for you, or through Premier Developer Support. So again, just some good things to keep in mind when working with the Video SDK. If no one else has any questions on creating your account, we're going to move on. I'm going to check the chat as well quickly. Looks like some people are adding in some information. Looks like we are good to go. I'll give us a few seconds if anyone wants to raise their hand or drop any more questions in. And if something comes to you later on in the session, feel free to ask then as well. There's no limit on when you can ask questions about creating your account.
Yeah, no, feel free to either use the Q&A or just type directly into the chat. Either way, that's what
Also
we're here for today.
Ask you to come off of mute if you want to speak verbally.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks like though we are good to go for this part. So Kelly, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and pass it over to you.
All right. All right, awesome. So I'm going to share my screen here and go over, now that you've created, let me share my screen first. Okay. All right, so now that you've created your credentials, which is what I have here, this is my SDK account as well, my developer account. I have SDK credentials here, where I have an SDK key and an SDK secret. And then I also have an API key and an API secret here. And I'm going to talk to you about sort of the differences between those two, what you can do with them, and how you can find them. Yeah, so we have, you'll go to marketplace.zoom. I started here and I can just show you what the flow was to get here. But if you go from marketplace.zoom, logged in, oh, I left a remnant. There we go. Logged into your correct video account. This is mine. I'm going to go in and hit build video SDK. That brings me to my sample application, which has all of the SDKs here for me to download if I want. And then I get to my credentials. So hopefully everybody can find that now. And the two differences are they will not necessarily work for the same thing. So you have to know the sort of the differences between what these two things will produce and how we get there. And that's what I want to talk to you about. So the first thing we'll go through is sort of what the SDK credentials are for, and that's more for controlling the SDK directly from your application, being able to create sessions from there and do all the interaction that the SDK needs to do with our API from that location. So what you'll want to be doing after you have your credentials is working on an authorization flow, which we have some examples. We have an SDK auth endpoint sample, which is in the resources page you have now in the wiki. That will give you sort of an idea on how you can write the endpoint to create a token to use with the SDK. So if you look through, this is essentially, we use a JOT token, and the payload is defined on this particular page here, the video SDK auth page. And a few requirements that we have just on this particular JOT specifically is you're going to need your app key, which is the video SDK key. And notice it is the SDK and not the API key. And that's the difference. I'll show you what happens when you mix those up. So role type. Role type is 1 will be the host or a co-host. 0 will be a participant. All the participants can join before the host. So that's just sort of how the roles work there. Topic, which is going to be the session's name, and it can be up to 200 characters. You're going to want to have the version set to 1, when it was issued, and it's just basically a Unix timestamp, and then when you want it to expire. And we have a minimum of 30 minutes to 48 hours. And I'll go over some of these details here too. And then we have a whole bunch of optional ones. User identity, that'll the session keys, so things that are geo regions for like the data center connection, all things that are optional, not necessarily required, but some of these things you may want to also include when creating a JOT, just to make sure that you have the proper permissions and everything set up correctly to interact with Zoom directly. So there's a sample payload here of the entire thing that you can also take a look at in our documentation. And then the an example jot as well. But the sample code is what I'm trying to get to here, and that's the big one. So this is essentially the functionality you would need to create a jot. I also have this in the app I will show you here. So in code as well, I have this built in over here, string down, simplified a bit. But I have a method called generate token, which will take an SDK key and an SDK secret, a topic and a role type. And this runs on an Express server that I've created. So this is just like a side project I have built out with JavaScript that helps me, sort of understand everything and learn things and debug stuff. So, so this generate token function will be called in a specific route over here called API generate. It's just a generate token for me. I pass in a couple of things. One will be, so the function needed an SDK key and secret. Those I'm actually going to get from environment variables on the server. So, and it's important to know that everything needs to happen on the server, right? So you don't want to have any exposure of your keys outside of your server environment publicly. That way you can't have your keys stolen and your credentials compromised in your account. So any particular vendor has tokens or keys or creation like this, make sure they don't get published anywhere publicly, especially on your server or in the front end in some way. So, and if you're doing anything like that, you're going to run the risk of somebody being able to get those and steal your account. So just a heads up, always be safe with that sort of thing. So this route will return to my front end a token that will allow me to then create a session using our UI toolkit. And I can actually show you how this works very quickly here. So if I click join and I want to inspect this page, so I'll show you if I hit join. So it says this account does not exist or does not belong to you. Okay, so in this particular application, I have an environment file where I have some various tokens set up. And one of those, I also have the Zoom API key and API token or secret. So those are telling me that this account does not exist or does not belong to you. So it's already failing in that regard. I also have a couple other important pieces here that are wrong as well that you'll find out. So we're going to talk a little bit about how these errors can really blow up your day. So if I have the wrong topic, right? If the topic doesn't match, that's a problem for a jot and with our sessions. So that's one thing that you have to look out for, and I'll fix that here in a second. Role type is also a integer and not a string. Sometimes that might bite me, where I'll have it accidentally become a string and it gets to the back end and it doesn't know what to do because it's not the right token. So let's have a look. So if I had my API keys here, I want to have not the API. I want to use an SDK key and the SDK secret. So let me fix that, and I'll refresh here. Click join. Okay, so it still says this account does not exist or does not belong to you. That's the same sort of error, but it actually becomes an issue of the role type. If I fix that and refresh, unless it's not rebuilding, it could be that too. Yep, let me try. Dev could also not be rebuilding. Double check. Okay, now there is a different one. All right, verified jot failed. So this jot failed because it didn't verify. So before it was an issue of I wasn't I didn't have a proper role type, and I did not have the proper credentials put in. So those two things made it seem like I wasn't supposed to actually be there. So then the jot here that was created, I want to go to a resource I put in there for you called jot.io. This will help you debug sometimes. So if I put this in here, this is going to tell me what my app key is. And it will tell me that, oh, look, my topic is wrong topic, right? So this is not helpful. And this is where things will fail, right? So this is something I have to fix. Now, what was it I needed here? Well, it's getting passed in from the front end, and whatever that is what I need to have this be. So I'm going to just take this and make a request body and topic, I believe is how it is. Actually, let me just back up here. Undo is your friend. All right, so I got a request body. Right, okay, I did it right. Sweet. Okay, so topic is coming in from the front end as topic, and then role types coming in as role type from the front end as well. So let me save that. Make sure this is still updating like it should be, but I can't tell. It's so big, and it basically scrolls all the way to the bottom, and you don't know if it's worked or not. All right, so let me refresh. Join. Verify. Okay, so working on my build process. Let's see if that fixed it. Okay, now look at that. Now I actually have a session, right? So this jot came back, session was started. I can enable my audio. I can now flip on my video, which shows you my awful office. I forgot I needed to do this first. Small steps. Small step. Don't forget the small steps, folks. Okay, now this should duplicate. There we go. Now it works. And then if I had somebody join here, that would come in. I have a chat window here as well. This is all UI toolkit stuff. This app will actually, I'm kind of working on it for my own self, but I think also next week we're going to go through it as well with UI toolkit. So you may not want to miss that. I think this also has screen share and then a leave button, so I can actually just exit and it will leave the session. So just like that. And I have a bug I have to fix. Otherwise, that is how that works. So that's how you get a proper one. So you need a proper SDK key, SDK secret. You have to have the topic match. You have to have the role type be an integer, which you could also in this context I could put in some sort of type gating, type gates kind of thing would go here. So we could do those sorts of things to make sure you're getting the right sort of thing. But yeah, so that's sort of the long and the short of how to do an SDK key and a SDK jot token. Taking this though and popping this into one of the other resources I sent out, which is Postman. Postman will show you how to run. I don't know if everybody's so Alan asked a question, perfect timing. Do the buttons and functionalities, do they come along with the video SDK? Those come along with the SDK UI toolkit, which I'll cover in shortly. The SDK itself provides you the tools necessary to interact with the session and the media stream and all those sorts of pieces. But the actual like buttons and everything like that, you would need to build on your own and can build on your own. UI toolkit is sort of a shortcut to bypass some of the controls and building out some of those pieces. So you can just sort of put that in and see how it runs and get started, but then you can start learning how to customize from there and build your own pieces. Does that answer your question, Ellen? Yes, Aaron, there is a React version in the example applications, that section of the resources I sent you. So that link there will provide 2 different versions. One is a React version, one is a vanilla JS version. So that will kind of give you an idea of how to approach some of the things. The React version is more of a kitchen sink as well. So, but it can be daunting to look at. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out and let us know on the forum. So, okay, so I have a active jot from my session that is actually over. So let me see if I can. I'm going to restart that real quick. Restart this and get a new jot. And I'm going to use this jot over on the API side and show you that using the SDK keys on the API results in a similar experience. Zoom. All right, so that is, did I do that right? It's like I feel like I did it right, but measure twice, cut once, right? Does that apply here? I don't know. Does anybody else know what that means?
I think
Am I the only?
Yeah.
If you don't know what that means, let me know in the comments and I'll explain it further. Let's see. Okay, SDK. And save. Okay, so if I go over here, now our API, which I haven't really introduced yet. So making API requests requires the API key and API secret, which come from your marketplace right here as well. So you're going to want those. And then you can make that call using what's called a bearer token for authorization. Okay, so you would generate your API, generate the jot using a little bit less information than you needed for the SDK, which makes it a little easier. But you would pass that in and you would get a jot back similar to this that would be used to make the API calls directly and passed in that authorization header. So we have a Postman collection. Hang on. Knowing which tab is which is always fun when they get small. The Postman collection link is in the resources kit, and I don't have it off the, hang on, let's see if I can just grab it here. Postman, there it is, postman.com zoom-developer. So we have a workspace here that you can install directly into Postman. Gianni, one of our own, was instrumental in helping getting this going. So you have a public workspace that you can open up and install, and that will look a little bit like this. And the collection is over here. I have just the my own fork, and then I just have the video SDK on this one, and just the small pieces. So, but there's pieces for sessions, and then sessions with an ID, reports you can run. This is all sort of like an administrative or session security changes, that kind of thing you can do. There are also, which I don't really cover in this one, but we'll probably cover at some point in the future, is webhooks and connecting to webhooks and getting that detail. So when session ends, you can do something on your server. So we have that available as well. This will cover running most of just the API for the video SDK and grabbing like session details and recordings and that sort of thing. So I'm going to close this for a second and just go back to my sample where I have my SDK secret and key being used to make that JOT token. And yeah, okay, still running. So now if I go in and use SDK token here, invalid access token. So pretty much anything that isn't valid is just going to be invalid. So so sometimes that can be hard to debug, but there's some options on how you can go about that. One would just be, again, grabbing the JOT itself and going to jot.io, seeing what that looks like, and seeing what might be wrong there. Oh, it's my SDK version and SDK token, I mixed them up somehow. That would be what I would do. I mean, I would mix them up somehow is what I mean. Okay, so let's go back and use an actual API token and show you what this really should look like. And if I send that, it is going to show me that I have a session that started here, and it doesn't have, well, I'm not currently sharing any video anyway, so I wonder if I go in and do enable audio. Ooh, I almost did it again. Almost showed you my office. Everything on that side of the camera is an absolute mess. I don't know about you. Let's see if I can get this to turn on here. There it goes. All right, so now I have these two here. And if I go and send, oh, nope, that's not what that is. Different setting. So I'll have to play around with this more. This is all fun stuff to learn. The new API. I haven't worked with the API as much as the app side of it. So we'll definitely have follow-ups, workshops for this. This will be fun. Okay, cool. So with that in mind, we now know API key, API secret used for calling the API directly for the video SDK API. The video SDK secret and key are for actually starting sessions, running the stream, getting all of the events coming back from the system, all the sorts of things that you're getting, like user information and that kind of stuff. So chat is another one, all those sorts of things. Those are all run through using the SDK key and secret. All right, so I'm going to leave this and I'm going to go back into, okay, so just recap a little bit, which I think I just did. So I don't need to recap this again. I do not have that up anymore because I just ran through it. And I completely forgot I had slides for this. So we're going to go through the slides real quick, just to reiterate everything one more time.
And
so
Kelly,
this is, yeah, go ahead.
You make it just a bit bigger when you go through it.
You bet. You bet. Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, cool. So here is when you're doing a video SDK JOT and you're using that and you've created something using those SDK key and token. This is going to get passed in this spot right here. It wouldn't be a string. It would be, well, it would be a string. It would be most likely something like a parameter getting passed in. But if you're, but it would be the actual string here and not just the video SDK JOT like this. So it would be the full amount. I can drop that into the notes here like I had before. Yeah, so it would be, this video SDK JOT would be the entire, that probably is not even visible. But it would be the entire JOT there. So sorry, let me make that in. Just trying to make sure everybody understands that part of it there. So the full JOT looks more like this. So that would be dropped in to that method to start a session. Okay, everybody follow me so far? Any other questions on how that might work? No, good.
I have a quick question, Kelly. Do either of these
Sure.
jobs expire?
Yes, and I'm getting there as well. So the expiration was a required field, and it goes. It has a minimum of 30 minutes or 1800 seconds. It's passed in as seconds, or 48 hours. So either one of those, minimum or maximum. But I'll give you a couple more best practices here on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, yep, yeah. So then the video SDK API JOT, you would use more like this. You would do a fetch of some API zoom.us v2, right? You'd actually use the API itself. I duplicated this. That's shame on me. And then you would pass in the bearer as a header. Okay, so the JOT gets used slightly different. They're made slightly different. Those resources are available on the resource page for the workshops, so you can use those as well. And I think that will help you get yourself untangled and unstuck if you do find yourself having trouble. But typically, there are just a few things if you kind of keep in mind that should keep you out of the weeds. So you're going to want to always create these on the server. You don't want to expose your key or secret. Your key probably okay. I mean, I had it up on the screen. Without the secret, it can't do anything, but just keep them both private. Don't publish them publicly, which publishing publicly makes as opposed to privately, right? So make sure it's a valid video SDK account. So the video SDK account that we set up today would be the one that you want to use, and not the prior ones that you may have had that are connected to Zoom. You want to make sure you have this developer SDK account for this specifically. Know when to use your SDK versus your API key and secret. Know which JOT is what. Make sure the session and the JOT topics match. And then expiration dates, you want to make sure the expiration is low, talking minutes and hours, not days. So we do have a maximum of 30 minutes, a minimum of 30 minutes and a maximum of 48 hours. So you want to keep it in between those two anyways, or it would fail. Again, it would probably do another verified JOT. JOT failed to verify error would be my guess. I haven't tried that one. But the keep it within those. We have 2 hours set. So the function I have has it right at 2 hours. But in order to get this to run, there's just an environment file that you would drop these two pieces into, those two keys in, which I didn't mention up front, but seems pertinent to say now. So any questions about that, or anything I may have missed?
Yeah, you did a great job of running through that, Kelly. Like Kelly said, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand if you want to ask off of outside of chat, or type it into the chat. But that was a really great run through of the difference between those two credentials. And then a quick question that I'm sure we all have an answer to, Kelly, but just to avoid pushing this file with our credentials up, what would we do to avoid that?
Good question. So there is a .git ignore file that you can have inside a repo that will allow you to set up specific things like environments, environment files, environment local, environment, any of these sorts of things. DS store always comes up for me using a Mac. It's sort of the how your preferences for Mac, I think, pop up all the time. So you're going to ignore those sorts of things. Anywhere you want to ignore files from being loaded. See how this is grayed out. What we want to do is we want to add those to our git ignore file and commit that, and it will prevent any of these files from uploading. So that's how you would prevent that sort of thing. And then don't hard code them inside your app either, would be the other one, is to avoid doing that mistake, which I've done in the past, where instead of doing it here, I just have a string with it directly, key directly here, right? And then that's never a good thing either. So that doesn't work out.
That makes sense. Thanks so much for answering that, Kelly. So just utilizing that git ignore on the server side, putting that env file in there, and never hard coding. So using process.env to read it in. And all these are for security issues.
Yeah.
Security.
Yeah. It doesn't look like anybody has any specific questions right now, but I do want to kind of go through the resources in the wiki real quick, and then I think we can probably wrap up. Okay, so information about just getting started with the developer accounts, how to set it up, how to access your account profile. There's settings in there that may need to be changed or updated, and that's one that some people tend to have a question, so I thought I'd include that link specifically here. Some specific documentation, the web docs, web reference for the video SDK itself. So let's take a look at that real quick before we finish up. And so this is the API, which and the examples here, I can actually just collapse all of these. So we have three major endpoints: cloud recording, sessions, also the Postman workspace. That's why I didn't really cover it here, but this will give you all this sort of ins and outs as well. It just doesn't let you run them like Postman does, which is kind of a nice feature. One quick tidbit too, you do have under API keys a valid JOT token right here that tells me when it's going to expire, and I can grab that and use that in Postman. Set it to like a day. I would set it probably for a day at max, and then you can have like a day of testing the API and that kind of thing. So that makes it a little convenient to get going directly with that. So I was on the reference. So yeah, I went through the API reference, which gives you all of these pieces. And then this is the SDK reference and all of the ins and outs that it has available to it. For example, what you end up getting down to usually is a stream, and here's just sort of all the functions for everything that you're going to be able to cover, and explanation on how to use them and get them to work in your application as well. So let's see. Some sample applications. We're going to hopefully be adding to these in the near term as well. Get a few more examples out. Maybe try to get some other frameworks written, and get you all some really easy to understand and learn from examples that will make it super simple to get going and expand your knowledge as well. So some useful tools. So I listed the toolkit here, Video SDK UI, SDK UI toolkit. That will get sort of give you the layout of everything that you can do with that and how that all works. The API workspace from Postman, JOT debugging tool, and then ways to find some help. So for this overall workshop, we have a developer forum thread, and then we have the Video SDK web dev forum. So this is specifically goes to our dev forum and on the tag web, and it gives you an idea of some of the questions you can, other people are asking, or you can look for help and see if maybe somebody's had the same question you have and has had an answer, or, well, how forums work. Most of us do, right? Or post your own question and we'll try to answer it as soon as we can, those sorts of things. So Rehema and I are on there all the time. There's several of us that you'll see in and out. So